Good morning, class 6 students. So I hope all my students are absolutely fine. Now, I hope in the previous classes, whatever we have studied, particularly related to civilizations, I hope all of you studied that thoroughly and you followed a simple tip or a trick that I gave you for remembering all the information related to the various civilizations. Now, in today's class, we are going to be studying something about, or we're going to understand more about chapter number 7. Now, before I start with chapter number 7, I wanted to understand from all of you that how do you study? Now, you might be thinking, what sort of a question is that, ma'am? How do you study? How do we study? So, we study using our textbooks, correct? So, of course, teachers are the ones who explain you what is given in your textbook, but what is the mode or what is the tool with which you study? Those are your textbooks, correct? So for different subjects, you have different textbooks. How is a textbook made? So there is a proper syllabus that is released by this board, by the education board. And then there are various known educationists who sit and design those textbooks. And then those textbooks come to us, correct? Sounds very simple. But think about how many centuries ago, how did people study, or what was the tool for studying, or what kind of textbooks exactly were there, and how these things or how these textbooks were used. And were these textbooks like the way we have for today only for education purposes? So in chapter number 7, we are going to read about this. This chapter number 7 is given on page number 56 in your textbook. So I want all of you to open your textbooks to page number 56 and chapter number 7, which is on, I already told you it is on page number 56. The name of the chapter is the Vedic Age. Okay, all of you opened this chapter? Very good. So now let us start reading about the Vedic Age. So whenever we talk about a particular age, like we talked about the Stone Age, we talked about the various civilizations, what is the first thing that we study about it? The first information that we study about it, the time period that it came into existence. So Vedic Age, first we'll understand the meaning, the time period and the emergence. So the word Veda comes from the Sanskrit word Vij, which means a root or knowledge. So when I talk about Vedas, we mean talking about knowledge. The Vedic Age is the period during which the Vedas were composed, that is, the Vedas were written. This period, what was the period? It was from 1500 BCE to 600 BCE, and it is also called as Vedic civilization. It is believed to have begun with the migration of the Aryans from Central Asia to South Asia. So when this Aryan race came from Central Asia and they spread towards South Asia, that is when it is said that the existence of Vedas, or rather the emergence of Vedas, started taking place. The Vedic civilization came into existence. Rising population and decreasing pasture land. So you remember in all the civilizations, we studied about how farming and livestock, these were the occupations. So there was rise in population and there was decrease in pasture land. It forced the Aryans to migrate to different parts of Europe and Asia in search of food and shelter. So they entered South Asia, so down south and the Asian part. So they entered South Asia through the Khyber Pass and they settled in a region which is mentioned as Sapta Sindhu. So this region is mentioned as Sapta Sindhu. And where, so this South Asia region that we are talking about is mentioned as Sapta Sindhu. In which Veda? In Rig Veda. And this region, the Sapta Sindhu region, it is the present day Pakistan and Punjab in India. The Aryans who arrived in Sapta Sindhu are also called as Indo-Aryan. Maybe owing to the fact that they entered the Indian region. And that time, of course, Pakistan was not there. It only happened after 1947 that Pakistan came into existence. So this was all a part of India itself. So the Aryans who came here, they were called as Indo-Aryan, and the Aryans, who arrived in South Asia after the decline of the Harappan civilization. They started a new culture, which today we know as Hinduism. All right. So Hinduism was a religion which came mainly because of Aryans who entered or who arrived in South Asia. Okay. Now, how do we come to know about the Vedic civilization? So we understood that for various other civilizations, there are very many sources, mainly the archaeological sources. You remember in chapter 1, we started what are the various sources. So you have literary sources, you have archaeological sources. So for Harappan civilization, Chinese, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian civilization, we rely mainly on the archaeological sources like the coins, the seals, the artifacts, the pottery, all these things, or the buildings or the architecture that was there. So all these were the archaeological sources. But when we talk about the Vedic civilization, these were basically written text. So we come to know about these obviously through literary sources. The Vedic literature, it is divided into two categories. First is the early Vedic period, and then you have the later Vedic literature. The Rig Veda is probably the first literary work of mankind. Besides the Vedas, there are Aranyakas and the Upanishads and the Purans and the Smritis. And we know the two great epics, that is Ramayana and Mahabharata. So do you know that Ramayana and Mahabharata, the two great literary works, they have many versions. So there is Ramayana, which is, one second. Okay. So you have Ramayana, which is, one second. So you have Ramayana, of course, which is, written by Tulsidas. Then, there are some other versions of Ramayana also. So they say that there is a Ramayana, which is also written from Ravan's viewpoint, how he viewed the entire episode or all these occurrences that happened. Same is with Mahabharata. So they say that Mahabharata also has a lot of different interpretations. Okay, and if you ever get a chance, you must read these two epics. And if you are not fond of reading, which is not a very good habit, but if you're not fond of reading, today you have so much of access to internet. Please make proper use of it. How are you going to do that? You can maybe through various channels that are there on internet, start watching the episodes of Ramayana and Mahabharata that your parents or your grandparents watched, which you can see on DD Metro channels. And please watch these two great epics. Why? Because they give you very important life lessons. And the beauty of these two epics is that they give you or they tell you a lot about moral value. Okay, moving ahead. Okay, so as I told you, the literary sources is what we mainly rely on, but there are some archaeological sources as well. Early Vedic Aryans had copper and bronze tools. The later Vedic period learned the use of iron. So early Vedic, what metal was used? Copper. And the later Vedic, iron was used. So they had 4 types of pottery, that is black and red, where red were basically, and the painted gray ware. Okay, so these are the archaeological sources. So probably these copper and iron tools that the archaeologists found and the pottery that was found, these are a form of the archaeological sources. Now, I've already told you that Vedic age is divided into 2 phases, the early Vedic and the later Vedic. Early Vedic was from 1500 to 1000 BCE, and the later one was from 1000 to 600 BCE. Now, we are going to have a look at a map which is given in your textbook. So this is the map that I'm talking about. So it says, so you see this light pinkish color, it says the Brahmavata or the early Vedic period. So all these regions which have this light pink color that you see here, this is the early Vedic period. So places like Ropar, places like Ganga Nagar. So you see this is Harappa, and these are the various rivers that are shown here. And the light yellowish or creamish period is the later Vedic period, okay, which you can see the rest of it. So this map again is also very important to understand how the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period, different regions were covered in this particular time period, okay. And it says the early Vedic period, it tells us about the life of Aryans in the Sapta Sindhu, which I've already told you. And they named the region under their control as Brahmavarta, which means land of the gods. Brahma, we know, is God, name of God, God of creation, and Varta is the land. And they composed the Rig Veda, which is our main source of information about Brahmavarta. And early Vedic period is also known as the Rig Vedic period. And talking about the later Vedic period, that is the Aryavarta, which means the land of the Aryans. So Brahmavarta, land of God, Aryavarta, land of the Aryans. And the later Vedic period is also called the Epic Age, as the great epics Ramayana and Mahabharata were written in this period. Now, whenever we have spoken about various civilizations, we have spoken about their social structure, how the society was divided into different classes, how or what set of people rather were in a particular group, and then someone in group B and someone in the third group. So we are going to also understand about this social division or the social structure in the Vedic civilization. Okay, so of course, this is the explanation that we have already done. Now we come to the social division. So this social division that was there in the Vedic period, it continued in India for a very, very long time. Unfortunately, in India, in rural part of India, or in very secluded part, in very remote areas of India, this division is still followed. Why I say this as unfortunate? Because this division is what divides the society in such a way that some section of the people are maltreated. So that's the unfortunate part. But this is mostly in very remote areas, because the Constitution of India, the beauty here is that the Constitution of India does not allow any form of discrimination. So these were the four sections or the four classes in which the society was divided. So if you look at the images, I believe it is very much clear. So first was Brahman. So Brahman meant mainly the priest. Then you have Kshatriya, that is, it included the monarchs or the kings or the people belonging to the royal class. Then you had Vaishya, people who were involved into different occupations, mainly business, trade people, people who were artisans, craftsmen, all these were Vaishya, and the last one was Shudra. So this part I was talking about being unfortunate, people belonging to the fourth classification, that is Shudra, were considered as lower classes, and they were extremely maltreated. They were not allowed to enter religious places. They were not allowed to sit at so many, at particular places. They were not allowed to eat and drink with other sections of the society. So that was very inhuman. So the Brahman was mainly at the top of the chart in terms of the social stratification. So the priest had a lot of privileges. They were very well treated. They were invited, of course, to all the religious related activities, and they enjoyed a very rich social status. And then came the Kshatriya, that is the king, and people belonging to the warrior section, Vaishyas, who were basically businessmen, and the Shudras. Now, we talk about the political system, how the society was organized in terms of politics. So basically, there was Kul. So there were units, different units. So Kul was the basic unit. Then after Kul, so first is family, then is village, that is Gram. So many Kul form Gram or the village. Then above village, so first is Kul, then is Gram. So many Kul form Gram. Then many Gram or many villages, they form what we called as clan or vis. Then many clans formed a Jan, that is like a sort of something which is bigger than a city. And Then many jan, that is, the clubbing of many jan formed the Rashtra, that is the country or nation. So simple way, Kul, that is family, then comes the village, that is Gram, then comes clan, that is Vis, after clan is Jan, and then the Rashtra. So if you remember this table, so another way, you know, there's one way which my history teacher taught me, and that is called remembering things, remembering the hierarchy through acronyms. So basically in acronyms, what we do in history is we pick up the first alphabet. So if you wanted to understand the political system, how would you do that? K, G, V, J, R. K, G, V, J, R. I'm repeating K, G, V, J, R. K, Kul, G, Gram, V, Vis, J, Jana, and R, Rashtra. So this was basically the political system. Now each of this unit, whether it was the Kul, whether it was the village, the Gram, whether it was Viz, whether it was Jana or the clan, or the Rashtra, all these units had a particular head. So when we talked about Kul, the family, who was the head? It was the father, or who was also called as Kulapa. Then who was heading the village? Head of Gram was Gramini. Who would head the clan? Visapati, because it comes from the word vis. Who would head a Jan, or basically this unit? The Gopa or Gopati. And who would head the Rashtra? That was Rajan, or the king. So now you know the meaning of the word Rajan. Rajan basically means who is the head of the Rashtra, or basically the country. Okay. Now we are going to do a small comparison between the early Vedic age and the later Vedic age in terms of the family, the Kul, how it was. So family was the basic unit in early Vedic age. In later Vedic age, joint family system prevailed. Early Vedic age, women had rights, but in later Vedic age, there was a significant decline in the status of women. That is, a lot of rights were taken away from women. Early Vedic age had a very rigid caste system. The caste system that we had studied, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. It was very rigid. People were very particular about it. And early Vedic age, the caste system did not prevail, But in the later Vedic age, it was very rigid. Early Vedic age, the kind of education system was based on Gurukul. We'll study what Gurukul is. Later Vedic age, the system of Gurukul, it expanded, it enlarged. Then the kind of food that was eaten was mainly milk, barley, fruits, vegetables. In later Vedic age, the consumption of meat was reduced. Early Vedic age, there was worship of elements of nature, and in later Vedic age, religion, it became more complex, and the idea of gods came into existence. Early Vedic age, there was absence of temples and idols, but in later Vedic age, Brahmins, they introduced many rituals and they made their position secure. Now, when we talk about the Vedic age, there are 4 main ashrams that we talk about. This is also very important. Like you had 4 stratification, correct? Now we are talking about the 4 ashrams that existed in the Vedic civilization. First is Brahmacharya. That is when you are unmarried and you are a student of, let's say, up to about 25 years old. Once you reach 25, so 25 to, let's say, around 50, when most of you have dispensed or you are fulfilled, that is the time when you have to fulfill all your responsibilities that you have towards your family. So you have to earn for your family, you have to take care of your family, you have to love them, respect them, ensure that your children get good education, ensure that they are employed. So that was grihastha, related to home. So after Brahmacharya, you moved to the next ashram, which was grihastha. That is when you start taking care of your family responsibilities. Now, once after so many years, you've taken care of your family responsibilities, you've fulfilled all of them. That is when you move to the third ashram, which is the vanaprastha. That is, now you go to secluded place like forest and you start meditating. That is, now you try to build up your connection with the Almighty. Why? Because the purpose of your life related to your family responsibilities has been fulfilled, and now is the time when you need to connect yourself to the Almighty. And last was sannyas, when you finally give up the probably the greed, let's say, or the greed for materialistic pleasures, when you do not feel a need for any materialistic pleasures, and you become a sannyasi. Okay, and you rely on, let's say, alms for fulfilling basic need like hunger. So you move away from wants and you fulfill only your basic needs. So these 4 ashrams are also very important, and you might have heard of these in a lot of rituals. Okay, so first brahmacharya, then grihastha, then vanprastha, and then a sannyasi. Now we talk about education, wherein I was talking to you about how do you study. So like in today's world, you have proper schooling, correct? Sorry. So in today's world, you have proper, one second. So you have proper schooling, correct? You have teachers who teach you different subjects. One second. Okay, so you have teachers who teach you different subjects, correct? You have proper classrooms, you have a set of textbooks. But how did the concept of education prevail in the Vedic age? That's what we are going to study. Okay, so Vedic age education. All right. So when we talk about education, I've already told you that the concept of Gurukul prevailed. And who basically was sent to Gurukul? So boys belonging to 3 upper castes. What are the 3 upper castes? The Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas. Only these boys who belong to these 3 castes, they were sent to Gurukuls, which was situated in forest. And Gurukul literally means the house of Guru. So now there was a teacher who was addressed as Guru. Now what you need to understand is that no matter whether you are a son of a king, even if you belong to these 3 upper class, you were still treated exactly in the manner the other children. So even if you are a son of a king, you would be treated just like any other student. So there was no discrimination. So it was a very unbiased system, and every student had to fulfill all the duties that were given to them by their gurus. So it wasn't like that, oh, I'm the son of the king, I'm not going to fetch water. No. Even if you are a son of the king, if the guru tells you that you have to go fetch water from a far off land, you had to do it. Basically, in these gurukuls, these students were made to understand life. They were trained to have a fruitful life. They were never encouraged to be lazy. Sometimes what do? Oh, I don't feel like going out to school, I'm going to sleep today. This was not allowed in Gurukuls at all. And these students, they were made to stay in those premises. They had to wake up early morning, do jobs like cleaning and filling water, watering the plants, then get ready, be on time, and go for their classes. And what were the kind of subjects that were taught? So they were taught subjects like philosophy, logic, religion, grammar, ethics, and arithmetic. And Dhanurveda, or war tactics, was taught to princes. Why? Because ultimately they had to go and fight battles. Correct? Now we talk about religion, the kind of religion that existed. So Indra was the chief god. Then you had god of fire, and then you had god of sun. Okay. Then in the early Vedic age, basically you had the god of wind also, goddess earth, and the Soma, the god of flowers. In later Vedic age, what changed? So in early Vedic age, you had a lot many gods. Basically, as I told you, that nature was worshipped. So you had Indra Bhagwan, you had Surya Bhagwan, Surya god. So basically, god of earth, god of sun, god of water, god of wind, god of plants, all these were elements of nature. In later Vedic age, mainly 3 gods were worshipped, which were called as Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Brahma basically considered as the creator of earth. And this combination of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh was also called as Trimurti. And when were these worshipped? These were mainly worshipped in the later Vedic age. Then we talk about what was the kind of food and dress and what were the sources of recreation. So basically, the kind of food that they ate was simple, which was barley, rice, wheat. We already discussed that. And for entertainment purposes, the Aryans, they participated in chariot racing and hunting. And they also played dice, game, and music and dance was also performed. And they liked playing music instruments like veena and flute. And the Aryans, they wore dresses which were made up of cotton and wool. And men, they wore dhoti as a lower garment, and the upper garment was like a shawl. And they wore turbans and kept beard, and women wore nivi. What exactly was nivi? A dress worn at the waist and athivasa, the upper cover. And they also wore a lot of ornaments and jewelry. What was the economic life like for other civilizations? We started, what were the occupations? So for early Vedic, mainly they were involved into hunting and animal rearing. In later Vedic, that is when people started depending more on agriculture and cattle rearing. And of course, in the early Vedic age also, trade developed through the system of barter. So what exactly was barter system? If you remember, I told you in previous classes, that is one commodity was exchanged for another. So let's say if I wanted a goat, someone else wanted a let's say a bag of rice. So I had to look for someone who I have a goat, but I want a bag of rice. So I had to look for someone who wanted a goat in exchange of bag of rice. So I would go and find that person. If I find that person, I would give that person the goat and take the bag of rice. And this exchange of commodities was called as the barter system, because there wasn't really any currency. But in the later Vedic age, merchants group protected the interest of traders, and Nish, Swarna, and Santhama were the main gold coins. So now the currency came into existence and everything was exchanged for those gold coins, just like the way you use money in today's scenario. So this is about the Vedic age, and what I want all of you to do is small homework, that I want all of you to know the 4 Vedas that are there. So you have studied something about Rig Veda, but there are 3 more Vedas that you need to know about. I want you to know at least that what these Vedas are about. Okay, so one thing that we studied is that Rig Veda tells us something about the Aryas, but what about the other 3 Vedas? Okay, and I'm going to see you all in the next class. Till then, bye bye.